I can't buy the air I breathe. I can't buy the trees. I can't buy the deepest seas. But it don't matter, 'cause they're there for free.
Hello and welcome to Around the World in 88 Tales. I'm David Heathfield and I'm here at the Royal Albert Memorial Museum in Exeter, celebrating stories and artifacts from all around this wonderful world. And I'm so happy today to be with a storytelling friend and teacher, Cora Teske. Hello, Cora, how are you?
Hi, fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, and you're in Wolfsbüttel.
Wolfenbüttel.
Wolfenbüttel.
Wolfenbüttel. Not that easy. Yes, I'm in Wolfenbüttel in Germany, yes.
In Germany. Cora, before we begin with the storytelling, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in storytelling and why you're interested in this project?
Yes, so I'm a teacher and a teacher's trainer, and I really love stories. But sometimes my problem is that when I tell a traditional story, I always forget parts of it. So I started inventing stories when I was a child. I had a younger brother, or still have a younger brother, and I always told him kind of educational stories because he was never behaving too well. And so I made up my own stories to tell him what to do in life. And that is what I'm going to do today too. I'm going to tell a story that I invented. And as I have 3 daughters, this is a story for girls, for strong girls.
Well, we'll be coming to your story very soon. It's inspired, as is the story I'm going to tell, by a beautiful object from the museum's collections, from the World Cultures collection, which is this comb. And I'm going to show the comb. You can see it's made of wood. It's a double-ended comb, and you might guess it's from Africa. It's actually from Tanzania. And if I hold it close to the camera, you see it's decorated with concentric rings. And this is a typical design from Tanzania and Zanzibar, and is it's from Swahili culture. So I'm just going to put it on display here while we tell our stories. Let's just see if it will rest there. Yeah. Okay. And there we go. But my story that I'm going to start with actually does not come from Tanzania, which is here. The story I'm going to tell comes from very far from here. It comes from the very north, from the Arctic. It's an Inuit story, and the comb is significant in the story. It's a myth story, a mythology story. So I tell it with respect to all of the Inuit people. There are many variants of this story. And it's a story of great power and significance, and also about a very powerful female character.
Nice.
Long ago, in the early days, when there were no seals or walruses or whales swimming in the oceans, there lived a young woman called Sedna. She lived with her father and their dog in a small shelter near the icy coast. Many of the young men of the local communities came and asked Sedna to be their wife, but she was proud and she always refused. None were good enough for Sedna, until one day, paddling his kayak across the ocean, there appeared a stranger, tall, dark. He wore fine furs. Sedna looked at him and wanted to know more. He spoke gently about his home, the great house that she could live in if she came with him, the fine food that would be cooked for her, the warmth, and she believed him. So he went to her father and offered her father a gift, a wrapped package, and her father gladly agreed, and Sedna bade farewell to her father and was paddled away on the stranger's kayak across the ocean. But far out away, in a deep place, that man threw his paddle into the water. He lifted his arms high above his head, and his arms became feathered wings. He became his true nature, the spirit bird, the loon. And he carried Sedna on his back, flying high above the water until he came to a craggy cliff island. And there she found herself in that loon bird's nest. There was no house or warmth. Bitter wind blew. She was so cold, it was desolate. And the food he brought her was only fish. And she ate the fish raw and was so sad and sorrowful. Far away, her father opened the package, only to find that it contained rotten fish heads and bones. He worried for his daughter. He thought he would bring her back. So he climbed into his kayak, and her father paddled strongly across the ocean, leaving their dog behind. He paddled and paddled, and finally he came to that craggy island. And there was his daughter at the cliff top, calling for him. She had seen him. "Take me away from this place, father." Her husband, the loon bird, was away, but the other birds saw and heard. As Sedna climbed into her father's kayak, and her father paddled away, using all his strength at great speed. But now the loon bird, the spirit bird, returned, and was told by the birds. And he turned himself to human form, and climbed into a kayak, and paddled after Sedna and her father. And he was strong, and was soon catching up. And he called to Sedna's father, "Let my wife remain with me." But her father paddled on, urged by Sedna to paddle faster. But the loon bird was getting closer, and he turned himself again into his bird spirit form, lifting his arms above his head, those feathered wings flying high above the water, above their kayak. He called in sorrow for her to return, but she didn't respond. And now the spirit bird plunged into the water beneath the kayak, and as he did so, the water turned dark, and the waves began to seethe and swell, and waves began to crash over the side of the kayak. And Sedna was afraid, as was her father. He paddled as fast as he could, but now a great storm began to rage. "Faster!" said Sedna to her father. But the storm was great, and Sedna with a great wave was washed overboard and into the water, and down she sank. The storm continued, and she swam up again to the side of the kayak and clung on to the side. "Father, pull me aboard." But her father was so afraid, and to his own horror, he took a small hatchet and he hacked at his daughter's fingers. He wanted to be free of the spirit bird and of the storm. And some of her fingers were cut away. And as those fingers bled into the water, those fingers became the first seals that swam in the ocean. But Sedna rose up again in the storm, rose to the surface. "Father, save me!" clinging on with the remaining fingers. But again he slashed and cut away more. And those fingers, bloody, became the first walruses that swim in the ocean. But she did not give up. She swam up again, clinging on with those few fingers that remained to the side. "Oh, Father, do not betray me." But again he slashed and cut with the hatchet, and all the fingers that remained were gone. And the fingers and the blood became the first whales that swim in the ocean. And Sedna remained in the world below, but her father in that great storm went on and on, paddling until he reached his home. He found his dog, and together they clung to each other for safety. But Sedna, now furious, called all of the whales and the walruses and the seals of the ocean, and together they came to that shore and created such a huge wave that it washed their shelter away, and her father and their dog were swept under the water to remain with Sedna. Since that time, the Inuit people live by hunting for seals and walruses and whales. But it is hard. Most of the time they return empty-handed. So the shamans, in their dreams, they chant and sing to Sedna. They travel in their dream down to the depths, and with combs made of bone and walrus ivory, they comb Sedna's long black hair to placate her, so that she might give a seal or a walrus or a whale, so they can live, so that they can have food from the meat, oil for their lamps, skin for their clothing. Sedna sometimes lets them hunt, but sometimes she remembers the betrayal of her father, and in anger she sends a storm, and a hunter is lost at sea. This is the story of Sedna. So, this is the story that I wanted to share. A woman of great power, Cora.
Yes. Wow. What a story.
I hope you enjoyed it. I love telling that story. I'm just going to see, if you're in the Facebook room live, please tell us where you are and your name, and you can leave a comment about my story and the story that Cora's going to tell. Or even if you're watching the recording, of course, you can still leave a comment. Tell us who you are. Or if you're watching on the YouTube, please do the same. It's a story of great significance to the Inuit people, but I think it's also a story that's important for all of us to remember our connection with the natural world. These times of troubled times, and times when we need to think about our relationship with the natural world and how we treat the creatures that live around us. So, Cora, is there a story that you would like to tell?
Yes,
Maybe
there
inspired
is.
by the comb.
Yes, mine is actually inspired by this comb.
Fantastic.
And this is a magic comb. I'm not going to tell you how I got it. That is a totally different story I could tell another time. And this magic comb is really special. If you put it into your hair, it changes you into any animal you want to be.
Wow.
Yes, I'd better not put it into my hair now, because otherwise I won't be able to talk to you and I won't be able to tell my story. So let's start. Once upon a time, there was a young woman, and her name was Lilly. And she was a maid in the king's palace. She was a simple girl, but she had a good heart and a pure soul, and she was in love with Prince Jamie. Not that she had ever talked to him. I mean, he was a prince and she was a maid, but she had seen him from far away and he looked very handsome. And all she could think about was one day I want to be his princess. One day she was cleaning the fireplace and Prince Jamie and his friend walked past and she heard them talking. Oh, all I want is this comb, this witch's comb, said Prince Jamie. But why? Asked the friend. Because I have everything else. This is the only thing I haven't got. And this would give me so much power. So why don't you go there? Asked the friend. Why don't you go and get it? Because it is in the white forest, in the witch's house, and you can only go there if your soul is pure. And my soul is certainly not pure. And he started laughing. They walked away, and Lily thought, oh, wait a minute. That is it. If I go there and if I get this magic comb, he will certainly love me. And I could become his princess. And so she took all her belongings, she took some bread and some water, and she started marching. And it was a very, very long way to get to this forest. But after many days and many nights, she finally came there. It was called White Forest because of the mist. It's very difficult to go through there. And if your soul is not pure, you will not see anything. But she did not really have problems. She walked and then she found the witch's house. And I don't know about witches' houses in your countries, but in Germany, witches' houses are very special. They are gingerbread houses. Beautiful, really nice. And this one was no different. The walls were made out of ginger sweets. There was a river of honey in the garden. There were candy canes as fence. There was chocolate on the roof. For me, it would have been really difficult to go in there. I would have just eaten everything. But Lily was different. Lily really knew what she wanted. She was determined. And so she just marched through it. She did not look left. She did not look right. She did not taste anything. She did not even try to smell the nice foods. Nothing. She opened the door. She waited. No sound. Oh, the witch was not at home. Very good. So she walked right in. She was quiet. She looked around, and there, next to the witch's bed, there was the comb. She walked there, and she took the comb. And just as she was about to put the comb into her hair, something grabbed her wrist. She turned around, and there she was, the witch. The witch had a white face, sharp white teeth, red eyes, and she was incredibly ugly. And she stared at Lily. So Lily reacted really fast. She put the comb into her hair. She turned into the biggest white wolf you have ever seen. She bit the witch into her arm. The witch let go. Lily turned into a bird and flew out. She was free. For the first time in her life, she was really free. And she was flying and she enjoyed it so much. And oh yeah, she wanted to go to the palace. She almost forgot. So she flew to the palace. She was much faster now. And she landed. And then she thought, how will I get into Jamie's room? Oh, wait, I will walk in as a cat. Cats can go everywhere. And a cat, if you have a cat, you should know, a cat is a very royal animal. So she turned into a beautiful white cat. And she walked through the palace and she came to Jamie's room. He was not there, so she lay down on his bed and she rested. And after some time, the door opened and Prince Jamie came in. And he looked at her and he smiled. And then he took her and he threw her against the wall. And then he laughed, the meanest laugh you can imagine. Lily turned back into herself. And she said, Prince Jamie, this is the magic comb. It could have been yours, but I just realized that you're not such a good character at all. You're a really cruel person. Why should I marry you? Why should I give this comb to you and give all the power to you? You are not worth it. And she put the comb back onto her hair, turned into a bird, and she flew out of the palace. She never returned to the palace. She had the best time of her life. She went to see many places and she had many adventures. And one day she met someone who deserved her love, someone with a good heart. And I can promise you, she lived happily ever after.
That was absolutely beautiful, creative storytelling, Cora. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I've met your three daughters. They're very creative. And one of your daughters is Lilly.
Leilani.
So it's very, very close.
Very close, yes.
Very close. Let's dedicate our stories to all the daughters.
Yeah, and that they don't fall for the stupid princes.
Absolutely. Or be betrayed by their father. That was a terrible thing.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I love the comb and this idea of the comb as being something that can transform, because the comb has such power in different stories to placate Sedna. In many stories, the comb is a sign of enchantment as well. That when the comb is in the hair, that the character, usually a female character, may be put under a spell. So there's such a power in this seemingly simple, everyday object. Wow. Thank you so much, Cora.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I you said that there was another story about how the comb came to you, but we'll have to wait and find that out another time.
Yeah, that's true.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Say goodbye for now. Bye-bye. Bye.
I can't buy the trees. I can't buy the deepest seas, but it don't matter, 'cause they're there for free.